The fires still burn. The longships rest on blackened shores, their dragon heads glinting red in the dying light. Smoke drifts over what used to be a village. Now only ash, blood, and silence remain. The Vikings have won. And now the feast begins. But what followed victory was not celebration alone. It was domination, humiliation, and the darkest kind of ritual. Tonight, we step inside that darkness. Inside the feasts, the fires, and the fates of the women who were taken when the swords fell quiet. Stay until the end of this video, because what began as victory ends in a revelation few history books dare to tell. Every Viking raid began with a promise: plunder, glory, and women. When the longships cut through the mist, the sound alone was enough to send fear down the coastline. The rhythmic beat of oars, the thundering war drums, the low growl of men who had tasted blood before. It was a sound that meant one thing: death was coming. When the warriors landed, they came like a storm, swift, merciless, and deliberate. Their axes gleamed in the early light, their shields bore painted beasts, and their war cries shattered the calm of dawn. Villages that had slept under the illusion of peace woke to fire. Doors smashed open, children cried, men ran to defend their homes, only to be cut down where they stood. Gold and silver were stripped from altars and hearths, livestock slaughtered or taken. And the women were prizes. They were seized amid the chaos, dragged from homes, torn from families, their screams drowned beneath the clash of steel and the roars of victory. To the Vikings, these war brides were not individuals. They were symbols of dominance, living proof that one tribe's gods had fallen before another's. After all, in the Viking mind, conquest was divine. The Norse gods themselves took women as spoils in their tales: Odin, Thor, even Loki. If the gods did it in Valhalla, why not their mortal sons here on Earth? But this was no union, no marriage. This was a ritual of ownership, a dark ceremony where victory was sealed not only in blood, but in the taking of bodies. And as the last cries faded and the fires devoured the night, the warriors turned from battle to celebration. Another ritual awaited: the feast. And for the captured women, that was when their true nightmare began. The victory feast was not just food and song, it was the Vikings' declaration of power. They gathered in great halls lit by torches, mead flowing like rivers, meat roasting over open flames. Skalds sang of Odin and Thor, and the chieftains drank to the dead. Outside, the captured women waited, terrified, chained, and shivering. They would be brought in not as guests, but as spoils, displayed before warriors drunk on death and triumph. And here, the Vikings decided their fates. Would she be a wife, a thrall, or a sacrifice? It depended not on mercy, but on mood. The first night after a raid was often the most brutal. Captured women, wives, daughters, maidens, were claimed by warriors in drunken celebration. To the Vikings, this wasn't cruelty, it was the natural order of victory. But to the women, it was a descent into hell. They were forced to watch as warriors drew lots for them. Their names replaced by numbers, their futures decided by chance. Those chosen were dragged to the feasting tables, forced to serve, dance, or worse, to be used as a public display of dominance. And when the night ended, not all of them saw the dawn, because some war brides weren't meant to live through the feast at all. Vikings believed that blood pleased the gods, and after great victories, sacrifices were essential. Among the offerings, slaves, animals, and sometimes captured women. Accounts from Ibn Fadlan and later chroniclers describe rituals where women were killed to accompany their masters into the afterlife, burned alive, strangled, or stabbed as the ship went up in flames. It was called the rite of passage to Valhalla. For the Viking, it was honor. For the woman, it was horror. She was forced to smile as the knife touched her throat, believing, or pretending to believe, that she was joining her master in eternity. That's what the Vikings told themselves. But what really happened after the feast was far darker. The majority of captured women weren't killed. They were enslaved, traded, sold, or used for labor. These women, called thralls, were the economic backbone of Viking society. They cleaned, cooked, and bore children they did not choose to have. Some were sold in distant markets, from Dublin to Constantinople. Others lived out their lives as property, their names forgotten. One Arabic merchant wrote that Viking women slaves were as common as livestock. They fetched higher prices if they were young and beautiful. In the eyes of the Vikings, their worth was measured not by who they were, but by how they looked. But not all war brides accepted their fate. Some carried fire beneath their silence, waiting for the moment to strike back against the men who had stripped them of everything. The sagas, those haunting threads of Viking memory, speak of women who resisted in ways both quiet and violent. Some spat curses in the faces of their captors, invoking old gods to damn their conquerors. Others poisoned the mead that was forced into their trembling hands, turning the victory feast into a funeral. A few chose the final act of defiance, taking their own lives rather than allowing a single breath of submission to stain their souls. One saga, carved deep into Icelandic tradition, tells of Melkorka, an Irish princess seized during a raid. She was taken as a slave and gifted to a chieftain, a man who saw her only as a possession. But Melkorka refused to give him the satisfaction of her voice. She pretended to be mute, watching, learning, enduring. Years passed in silence. She raised a son, earned trust, and hid her fury behind obedience. Then, one night, the truth returned like thunder. When she finally spoke again, it was not with fear, but with fury. Her captor heard her words and realized too late that his silent thrall had outwitted him. Melkorka escaped, reclaiming her freedom and her name. Stories like hers were rare, sparks of resistance in a world that expected women to be nothing but shadows. Yet even in these moments of courage, defiance often drew blood. Those who fought back were beaten, mutilated, or made examples of, warnings carved into flesh for others to see. Still, their spirits lingered in whispers and songs, proof that even in chains, some hearts refused to bow. The aftermath of these unions left a legacy of children, born between conqueror and captive. Some were raised as heirs. Others were cast out as half-bloods, marked by shame. But their existence changed the genetic map of the Viking world. From Scotland to Russia, traces of Norse lineage can still be found, a silent echo of those violent nights after the feast. Every family with Viking blood may carry within it a story of conquest, and of a woman who never chose it. Before we continue, if you're drawn to the hidden side of history, the kind that textbooks bury and legends distort, then this channel is for you. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because the next story might just reveal what the victors tried to erase. Now, back to the feast, because the darkest part hasn't yet begun. After the feasts ended and the ships sailed home, the surviving women were absorbed into Viking households. Some became wives, often after forced conversion or baptism. Others remained slaves, marked by iron collars and branded skin. They lived in silence, forbidden from speaking their own language or practicing their faith. Their lives were measured by obedience and by the number of children they could bear. To defy the master meant punishment. To escape meant death. Their only hope was time or the sea. Some did escape. They ran into forests, hid among monasteries, or blended into markets as traders. Those who returned to their homelands brought with them stories. Stories of horror, yes, but also survival. Their accounts became whispers across Europe, tales that painted the Vikings not just as seafarers, but as slavers, raiders, and destroyers of innocence. And though these stories were often dismissed as enemy propaganda, archaeology has begun to confirm them. Shackles in graves, burned settlements, and mass female burials with trauma marks. The evidence is no longer legend, it's reality. The modern myth of the Viking, brave, noble, free, is a story written by time, not truth. It's the image carved into television screens and tourist souvenirs, the fearless explorer, the rugged seafarer, the symbol of raw freedom. But behind that myth lies something far darker, a trail of stolen lives and silenced voices. Every saga we celebrate, every tale of valor and discovery was written over the bones of the conquered. Even the term war bride sounds almost poetic, doesn't it? But it was nothing more than a gentle mask for theft, enslavement, and subjugation. It was conquest wearing the disguise of marriage. Some historians try to soften the story. They say these women were eventually assimilated, that they adapted, found their place, became part of Viking families and culture. But assimilation is not redemption. It doesn't erase the chains that bound them or the terror that began their story. It doesn't rewrite the screams that echoed through burning villages or the tears shed beneath foreign roofs. To understand Viking glory, you must first confront Viking brutality. Their victories were not just written in blood, they were built upon it, brick by brick, bone by bone. The long ships that carried legends across oceans also carried slaves. The gold that gleamed in their halls was bought with suffering. And the same hands that raised mead to Odin had once dragged women through smoke and ruin. The myth endures because it's easier to believe in heroes than to face what they truly were. But history, true history, does not flinch. By the end of the Viking Age, the world began to change. Christianity spread, kingdoms united, and the old gods fell silent. The feasts grew smaller, the raids fewer. But the memory of what happened after those victories, the screams behind the songs, the tears behind the mead, never vanished. They linger in sagas, in ruins, and in the DNA of their descendants. And somewhere between myth and memory, the war brides still wait, their stories whispered through time, asking to be remembered. The Vikings built an empire of fear, but they also built legends. And legends have a way of cleaning the blood from history's floor. Yet, if you look closer, past the poetry, past the long ships and sagas, you'll see the truth. You'll see the women whose names were never written, whose lives ended where someone else's victory began. And maybe that's what history truly is. Not what we celebrate, but what we choose to forget. If this story moved you, if you believe that every victory hides a tragedy, then help us uncover more. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another journey into the hidden corners of history. And when you're done, watch the next video on your screen, where we reveal the shocking truth about the Viking who sold his own people into slavery. Because in history, there are no heroes, only survivors, and stories the dead still whisper.